Hey, so I think I have completed my immediate prepper wish list. Now, I don't have a bunker. I don't have a true off-grid electrical system, but I feel like I have enough short-term stopgaps and long-term preparations to build whatever I need in a true SHTF situation. And my last two purchases really, I think, kind of covered my fear for long-term mobility and power generation, despite not having a full system. So I have my wind turbine, I have everything I need to build a tower, except for the guide wires, which I can scavenge in a pinch or buy with very little concern about supply chain logistics from local suppliers of metal, basically. The controller I picked up today can handle watt for watt all my 12-volt inverters. So I can power my fridge, I can power a television, I can power, my furnace. Probably not much else with regular consistency. But yeah, that's essential. So the fridge and the furnace running simultaneously and having some leftover power to run the TV is pretty much all I need for sustained off-grid generation capacity. The other thing that I purchased today was a gasoline, and this was a big decision for me, a gasoline chainsaw. So I got a pretty nice one on sale for like 120 bucks. I forgot the exact size, but significantly more juice than any of the electric ones I was looking at. Now I do run at work the 20-volt DeWalt system, and I'm a huge fan. I think that it is a great battery tool system that every professional should use. And I look seriously at buying the 20-volt 12-inch chainsaw with an extra 5 amp hour battery. I feel like I could get myself out of an immediate pinch. Like if a tree fell on my house, I could probably dismantle that tree. The question is really the battery capacity and cutting through, a live tree with a 16 to 20 inch trunk multiple times. You're gonna be pretty frustrated by the end. So I remembered something my former best friend, and I say best friend, I wasn't his best friend, but he was my best friend. Just because he had more friends. I had like 3 friends, he had like 12 friends. But he was legitimately one of my few close friends from high school on. Maybe 6 months to 6 weeks, in that range, before he killed himself in my garage. He made me promise that I would never buy an electric chainsaw. He was, amongst other things, security guard, but he was also the owner of a landscaping company. And I think he may have run into 1 or 2 homeowners that threw those things against a brick wall and then called him in to do the job. when he had given me that advice. But I've done chainsaw work to a small extent myself, but for the most part, I was cutting 2x4s and 2x6s. I wasn't felling trees, but I took his advice seriously when making this decision. Decided, you know what, in that situation, we get hit by a hurricane. I am stuck with a tree leaning against my house or a tree blocking my street, and I can't be secure in my property with a giant hole in the wall and a tree sticking through it, or I can't exit my street because there's a tree blocking the road. I need to cut that thing up myself, and I need to get to water or food, or I need to secure my four walls so I can sleep at night. I'm going to have a gas-powered chainsaw at my disposal. And for the depletion of my gas resources, again, I'm not out there planning to monetize this tool. This is really for personal use in an SHTF situation. The ability to liberate myself from, a confined location. A high-powered chainsaw is an essential tool, I think. So I got the big inverter. I'm sorry, not the big inverter. I got the big controller to manage my my wind. I don't have the batteries, and I don't have the solar panels. But in a long-term SHTF situation, I feel like I could acquire 12-volt batteries and acquire 12-volt solar panels by harvesting my local environment for those resources. I'm not saying I want to do that. I'm saying that in a real long-term SHTF situation where it's survival of the fittest, that stuff is around me in ample volume. If I have another 6 weeks to 6 months to prepare, I may or may not buy some 12-volt batteries, and I may or may not buy some 100-watt solar panels. I think if I had 600 watts of solar panels and 3,000 watts of wind generation capacity, maybe giving me actual outputs closer to 150 watt solar and 200 watts average wind generation, because 3,000 watts is the size of the generator. It says nothing about my wind speed, which is marginal currently at best. I would have a good chance of at least keeping a refrigerator going, keeping a furnace going, stuff like that for near indefinite periods of time. Now, I'm feeling pretty secure about the power situation because I don't have an off-grid power set up, but with the exception of 100-watt solar panels and 12-volt batteries, I have everything else. Food is covered, water is covered. My house isn't hurricane proof. I want to do some structural upgrades and turn my basement into like category 5 level safe room where I don't have to worry about the house falling, at least on one room in the basement. I don't have to worry about the roof being torn off, again, on at least one room in the basement. But with the exception of like category 5 safe rooms or bunker or a true finished and operational off-grid electrical system, I'm pretty much fully prepped out. I don't think much more is reasonable. And I'm almost hesitant to build an off-grid power station, what it would be, an off-grid power plant, because I'm currently under a green energy contract, so my electrical rates are fixed and renewable due to the purchase of carbon offset credits, and that contract has another 1.5 years on it. Plus, I don't want to draw attention to my property from authorities who might see a wind turbine and say, hey, did you pull a permit for that? Let me see what, I don't want to deal with that. I wouldn't deal with it in SHTF. And I don't want to necessarily advertise or annoy my current neighbors. Wind turbines can be noisy. And you're also saying to them, hey, there's the crazy prepper. We're going to his house for the next storm. I want to be erecting my wind turbine after the storm, after my gas has run out of my generator, after I can't go to work anymore and charge up my e-bike at work, after I can't, get any more number 2 fuel oil from work and heat my house, without energy coming from my natural gas. Like last resort, the neighborhood has thinned out. The population is reduced to people largely like me. At that point, that's when the wind turbine goes up and the solar panels start coming off the neighbors' houses, and I start salvaging 12-volt batteries out of people's cars. And that's when I build my system. Currently, right now, I don't feel like I necessarily have to take those steps. Now, like I said, if the system as a whole perpetuates itself for another 1 year, 2 years, God bless. In that year, I'll probably convince myself to buy 500 watts of solar panel capacity and build maybe a picnic table style, floor mount or ground mount platform for the solar panels, and kind of set up a system that way to prepare myself for new energy prices, which will hit me in just over 1 year's time when my contract expires. And if I make it to that point, and society makes it to that point, I will want the ability to generate some of my own electricity so I don't go bankrupt paying state imposed carbon credits, which I'm sure will be much more expensive than the ones I'm currently paying, because you got to pay for the government union on top of it. They'll use it as a tax. It's not going to go to carbon. It's going to go to their pockets. But that aside, the intention is for it to go to a carbon offset, not to public pension funds. And that's it. I don't have too much more to worry about. I've addressed the biological threat to an extreme commensurate with the threat. We live in dangerous times. CRISPR-Cas9 is available to terrorist states and psychopaths alike. The rationality of people going to Ivy League schools and studying genetic engineering is not being assessed by the NSA. It's just, even if it was, it's not like they're a competent judge on future malicious intentions. There's a significant biological threat that is not going away. And I've addressed that threat through ionization and health and fitness to an extent I feel is reasonable. Food preparations. I've gone 1.5 years out with stored food and beyond that, trapping equipment. I don't feel much more is reasonable. Water resources, I have almost 100 gallons stored. I have a hand dug well, and I have the ability to, hang 20 gallons in the air in a suspended container. Actually, 40 gallons now. I can suspend 40 gallons up in a tree and have a solar water heater supply me with a lukewarm shower, depending on the outdoor temperature and solar exposure. I don't feel too much more is reasonable. I'm not going to hand dig 1,000-foot well. That would be unreasonable. I'm not, there's just limits to this stuff. And the energy resources, this is the most expensive and complicated side of things. Transportation and home survival necessity. It's really a lot to say you're prepared, but off-grid cooking, I'm good for probably up to a year between my Franklin stove and my butane and a worst case, number 2 diesel waste oil. Oh yes, I will cook with waste oil, just not over an open flame. There'll be a heat exchanger involved, but I'm good for up to a year of cooking. It's just I'm running out of stuff to prepare for. So I don't know. I think I might move back to self-defense and home security. Preparing my basement for Category 5 hurricane, including building collapse. So what I'd like to have happen at some point is to build a cinder block partition wall in my basement that is structural, which, based on physics, cannot collapse. It would be a waste of space. There's a bunch of reasons not to do it. And then in that space, put an axe, put your food preps, put, the essentials. So if a Category 5 storm does roll through and we're already in a post-America environment, at least as we understand it today, in other words, you can't hop in your car and, run to Pennsylvania because a big hurricane's coming. You literally are stuck digging a hole to try to weather the storm. To be prepared for that, because as strong and sturdy as you think your house is, weather is stronger. So I think that might be the next step, because I do think preparing for serious hurricanes is reasonable. It's just not near the top of my threat assessment risk. But I'm seriously running out of reasonable, sane things to prepare for. That's what happens when you leave a Mike to his own devices. But I think I've done pretty good.